You see that kind of orange-red, sun-bleached, rust-stained block outside the local CVS? You know, some say that boomers still rent movies out of those things. Just a couple years ago, you used to be able to rent video games out of those things too. And if you knew how to Google Redbox free game rental coupons or knew how to create a fake phone number to keep signing up for their emailing list for the first time, you could even rent games for free. If you lived in a small town, it was pretty easy to rent brand new games on the day they're released too. So, what happened? Well, things have gotten a lot better and a lot worse, and a lot of trial and error happened too in the last 10 years or so. As we pass into 2021, we're officially a decade out from the death of most blockbusters, and we're at a point where Sony and Microsoft will let you download games from a subscription service for about the same price as a rental that you forgot to return for 3 days back in the day. So how did that shift happen, and what did we lose along the way? That's the idea of this video. Let's start way back at the beginning of 2010 with Blockbuster and other adjacent movie rental stores. You see, for about 20 years now, you could go into a movie rental shop and pick a wide variety of games off the shelf. Because they had to offer something for everyone, you usually had your choice of like 30 games across a couple console generations and console brands. They carried mostly popular stuff along with some licensed garbage, so you could pretty reliably pick up a Halo or Call of Duty if it wasn't sold out every time you were there. You could look at the case, pull out the manual, read about the characters. It ruled. You got a really good idea what you were renting. It had the same variety of snacks you could normally get in a movie theater too there, but way cheaper. The promotional stuff too, like Ecto Coolers or Star Wars popcorn buckets and Jar Jar Binks head soda bottles. You had instant gratification of like physically picking up a game, deciding to take it home for like $7. Couldn't always get a brand new game, but in a lot of cases it was pretty close and not nearly as much money as buying one. If it was like a 7 to 10 hour cinematic experience you're going to beat in one day, or decided you had enough because it wasn't really your thing, you didn't waste a lot of money. And if you didn't have a super rich family, most of the time this is how you were getting your games. At this point, game reviews weren't as easy to find. Not everyone was just looking up what they thought of new games. And shovelware licensed games were pretty popular in their heyday then, because they could appear on the same store shelf as the movie they're advertising with, so it was like a minefield. The $7 rental could easily save you $60 purchases on some unplayable trash licensed game you didn't realize was even about a movie. But as Netflix developed their website and people were able to watch films instantly and not have to worry about forgetting to return them, digital rentals got big fast and Blockbuster couldn't keep up and died.
I'm going to die!
There was no need for the costly build out and labor of an actual physical store when the same idea could be made into an online service or website. The problem was video games weren't really ready to do the same thing yet. Gamefly started the same way as Netflix around the same time by mailing physical discs, and it's still doing that. There's no option to download games from what must be the biggest video game rental service there is right now. What happened when Blockbuster disappeared to video games was this little red box outside from our intro. It started popping up outside Walgreens, Walmart, and Wawa. It was basically Blockbuster but as a box. Way cheaper to operate, and it could be in all 20 spots all over town like overnight. Game rentals worked in the same way they did at Blockbuster for about half the price, about $3 where you'd be spending like $7 at Blockbuster. So it seemed great, but there were a few caveats. The worst was the lack of variety. You probably had like 5 games available at a time at most. That said, they were intentionally new hot games. If there was an upcoming major release, chances are it would have ended up at Redbox. Another issue was the scarcity of the few games they had. Thankfully, you could eventually use their app by the end of Redbox's lifecycle to find the game, but early on, if you wanted that one popular new game, all you could do was just hope and search. I distinctly remember a day that consisted of me getting out of class early, checking every individual Redbox in town for hours just hoping to find Dead Rising. Eventually, we did find the game. There was no box art, no snacks, a little anticlimactic compared to the heyday of Blockbuster, but we did have a great time with it, and when I returned it, I accidentally returned a copy of Adam Sandler's The Wedding Singer instead, so we even got to keep it. This Redbox era lasted for a pretty long time, but from like 2017 to 2019, the game options at the box started to dwindle until they were pretty much just removed from the box altogether. Around this time I tried Gamefly for a while, but that shit is a joke. If you've never used it, this is how it operates. You pay $10 or so for one game at a time, or $15 or so for 2, and this is a monthly fee. They have pretty much any game you could want from the last 5 years, but you have to make a wish list. You don't just get to choose your game. It recommends you pick at least 10 of them, and in my experience that's basically mandatory. If you don't choose 10, you just won't get anything. I once paid for it, waited 2 weeks for my number one choice, and they sent me nothing. So, When you have your games or game returned, they pick from your top 10 based on what's available and ship you whatever they feel like. If your top 9 are out of stock, you get your number 10 choice, but you're paying the same thing. So if you really just bought Gamefly to rent like 1 or even 5 games and save $50, don't bother, it's not worth it. Good luck with that. Here's how I would cheat the system to get games on release a couple of times. I managed to get, I think, Borderlands 3 on release day or shipped on release day. And that's the only one that really comes to mind. So what you do is you put the game you want as your number 1 choice at least a month in advance. Then hold your last rental you had out till about 3 days before the big release of this new game. Mail your last rental back then, and if they happen to receive the game on the same day as the release date of the new game, they will ship you your number 1 choice on release. But if you haven't had it in your cart long enough, other people will be in line in front of you. If it comes the day after, it will have sold out by then. So it's kind of a... Thankfully, in the background behind this Gamefly BS I was dealing with and the death of Redbox, a few things have been brewing at this time. In 2015, PlayStation Now launched a game streaming service for a monthly price, but for years it didn't really work. It had been active and kind of a joke. Unless you had super high-speed Ethernet, you couldn't really stream games from the cloud without some serious chugging, and even then their few options were notoriously rough. Xbox Game Pass launched a few years later in 2018, and was smart enough to allow game downloads from their service, making internet speeds almost a non-issue and basically making it a rental service. But if you weren't on Xbox, it didn't really matter. Then 3 things happened at kind of the same time. Sony began allowing PlayStation Now game downloads also, following suit at the end of 2018, and Xbox began allowing Game Pass downloads on PC in 2019. So 2018-2019, these things became like a rental monthly service thing. At the end of that year, Google Stadia became a cloud-based console. First cloud-based console, as they say. A lot of people thought Stadia would have free games, and Stadia thought a lot of people would have better internet, but it didn't really work out and nobody had a good time, so Stadia died. But Sony and Xbox are now offering the perfect solution for essentially a monthly fee for any game rentals you want within their library. But what should be obvious to both of them is the next thing people expect is this service to include AAA games on release. How they're going to make that leap is anyone's guess, but if Gamefly can do it on the same 20-year-old model they've had forever, the big boys will figure it out. So now it's 2021, a decade after the death of Blockbuster. How does game renting feel? Does it feel good yet? No, not exactly, but it's close. The physical stores are going away and streaming's coming in, and as it becomes more prominent, capitalism will do its thing and make what we want happen. Thank you for watching. If you have any great memories or awful memories of renting games the last decade or even further beyond, let me know in the comments down below, and thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your night. Thanks. Goodbye.